ようこそどうぞはじめまして
Hello everyone, welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. If I can start with a sports analogy, because I'm sure there's lots of people that watch sports and also watch anime and listen to this podcast.
I mean, to be fair, sports anime, kind of a big deal.
I don't know if this analogy would apply, though. I feel like there's this thing that happens when you get late in the season where all the playoff seeding is decided and the games are kind of meaningless and everyone's going through the motions. I kind of feel like we're at that phase of this anime season. Where
I would definitely agree. I think
I'm not. This is a real ringing endorsement for this episode of the podcast, but I do feel like we're kind of coming down the home stretch with a lot of these shows. I don't really feel like anything that we're going to see is probably going to change our mind a whole lot on them for better or worse. And I also said, at the beginning of the season, a lot of the shows that I'm watching just don't really merit talking about every single week. So I
think we're kind of past the point where any show can surprise us, really. We know what these things are, for better or worse.
Yeah, except for Talentless Nana, but we'll get to that. So anyway, we're a little light on anime content this episode, and trust me, we'll have plenty more coming up in the next couple episodes, because we've got like season previews, we've got year-end stuff, we've got new season coming up. But for this particular week, we're a little light on anime, so we figured now might be a good time to talk about some of the anime-adjacent games we've been playing, which we'll get to. And we'll still talk a little bit of anime, too. But before we get to all that, let me introduce everyone. I'm Jel. I am joined by Iro.
Still here. Not dead yet, despite the anime season twist attempts.
Well, I feel like it's not necessarily that we're watching as bad, but I feel like we're just kind of
true.
Locked in and not a whole lot to say that we haven't said already. But we're also joined by G.
I belong to the streets of Ijincho now.
Yes, that's another topic we'll be getting into. We'll be talking a bit about the new Yakuza Like a Dragon game, or relatively new to us.
Yes, new to us is the best way to put it.
And we're also joined by Zig.
I'm alternating between the depths of Hades and post-apocalyptic America, so America.
Yes. So you're having a real fun time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I do like how when Death Stranding came out, everyone was like, "This is ridiculous," and then not that much long later, it came to be that maybe not so ridiculous after all.
Right, I definitely, I'm definitely, leery of the people who are like, oh, Kojima, the genius, Nostradamus, he called it. But also, it's like...
It kind of did.
He's not an idiot. Okay, he's not... I was gonna say he's not an idiot, but I was gonna say
he's capable of recognizing societal trends.
Yes, he is a very observant individual, and I think
he kind of is an idiot, though.
Yes, that's why I said
ways.
Right. Well, that's why I couldn't bring myself to say he's not an idiot, because he kind of is, but he's also very keenly aware of stuff going around him, and
he's a very smart idiot.
Yeah,
sure.
Well, I think it's more like Kojima couldn't have predicted a pandemic, but I think Kojima could see that the state of the world in its current incarnation, if it were to be hit by a pandemic, would react in some very specific ways. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
all right.
I guess that spoils the games we're going to talk about.
Yes. we didn't.
I'm not going to talk about Hades.
Yeah, no, we're not. We'll leave Hades out of this one, but we didn't mention Iroh also playing 13 Sentinels.
Oh, that's because he couldn't come up with a good enough Aegis Rim bit.
It's true. I couldn't come up with a good enough bit because we are no longer in the Showa era. So.
All right. Well, let's dive into a little bit of the game chat first before we get to the anime, and we'll start with G and I. We have been playing Yakuza Like a Dragon. I'm pretty sure G, you've passed me at this point.
Yeah, I
don't know what chapter you're up to, but
12.
Okay, yeah,
Jesus.
you're way ahead of me. I'm still in chapter 5, but
Yeah,
which is still, I mean, I still feel like I've played a significant enough chunk of it, but
it is a substantial game, like without a doubt. Like, yeah, it's
but I think, I just in getting overall impressions thus far, obviously there was a lot of skepticism on this particular game because of the major shift in the gameplay from, your beat 'em up action brawler to a hardcore JRPG.
Right. Although we have said in the past, I'm pretty sure even on tape, that like Yakuza is basically a JRPG already. Just instead
right.
of picking,
Except the battle system is
instead of picking your
totally.
commands,
Right.
you just push the square button to punch.
right. Like, yes, we have definitely, and I still stand by that analysis of the Yakuza series as a whole. That yes, that like its core like framework and tenets is very much like a JRPG, and like in many ways it masks that with its presentation and its choreography.
I always
and its
felt
subject matter, but
I always felt it was kind of in the kind of Legend of Zelda area where it's kind of an RPG adjacent, if that makes sense. It has a lot of the trappings of the genre, but a bit more of an action focus.
I definitely see why you say that, Zig, and I think you're right. I think it's just, but I do think that even more than Zelda, like the Yakuza series has always actually been fairly upfront about how RPG-ish it is. Like there are upgrade trees.
You have a
there's
literal quest log.
Right, you have a quest log. There's craftable material. I mean, weapons and gear. Like,
right.
It's.
And now they're not hiding it anymore.
Right, and now they're not really hiding it anymore with this latest game, which stars a new protagonist, Ichiban Kasuga, and who the conceit of the game is that like he grew up playing Dragon Quest. He's a big JRPG nerd, and like it's also maybe he has brain damage and like perceives all fights as these turn-based affairs.
I mean, that's kind of par for the course for a Yakuza protagonist.
Well, the thing is that they very early on explicitly make it clear that what Kasuga sees is not what everybody else sees. Like, nobody else is, like, freaking out about, like, This is the game that implies that heat actions aren't real. Or in the sense, it implies that heat actions are in the mind's eye more than any other game.
Are you telling me Kiryu did not actually grind those guys' faces against the pavement?
I refuse to believe that Kiryu didn't do that.
I believe Kiryu did. Maybe the implication is that Kasuga is not capable of those physical like achievements, and thus he just imagines them because. Yeah. Anyways, as for the game itself,
it's a bit weird. It's a bit weird, but also I will just say, just in general, I do think I appreciate the change. I don't know if it's necessarily better or worse, but like one of my things with because I've played all of 2 Yakuza games. I played 0 and Kiwami, and while I enjoyed them both, I haven't played more because the prospect of basically doing the exact same game, like mechanically speaking, just with like a different story, like 5 more times.
Right, we have had a lot of that game. Like,
yeah,
we've had 6.
It was a bit daunting, like for me to think about.
Totally.
Okay, I'm going to sit here and like basically play the same game with a new story.
Yeah.
Over and over again, and so the idea of like, I mean, not even just mechanically mixing it up, but the idea of having a new protagonist and new characters, like it's more of an ensemble type of group that you're working with. I think I like that, if only because it feels like something fresh and not me playing the same game over again.
Definitely. So like I want to make it clear, like I'm not gonna try to do some historical revisionism here. I was always pretty skeptical of Yakuza 7 / Like a Dragon. Because I genuinely
Yakuza.
Yes, I genuinely like the combat in Yakuza games. Like, I think that it's they are brawlers. They are fairly simple, but they do a masterful job of evoking a sense of like impact and physicality, right? Like, you have the heat actions, you have, like, you know, the ways in which, like, Kiryu punches a man and their body just, like, goes flying. Like,
slams into the ground or the wall.
Right,
whatever,
like,
right?
they make it, they make you feel powerful, they make you feel like the Dragon of Dojima, or a detective, or whoever the fuck you're playing, but, so yeah, I was definitely skeptical of the turn-based thing, also because, yes, like, the Yakuza games are kind of dreadful about random encounters, and it's one thing, like, in a brawler where it's like, alright, I'm just gonna, like, mash square for, like, 15 seconds until this dude dies, as opposed to, you know, having to do that in a JRPG. But I do think that overall the experience really is working well, if even just because it is such a departure from the usual format. I'm not sure... I don't think I would want this to be the direction of the franchise going forward, but I would definitely be down for, like, the Kasuga line of Yakuza games being, like, these turn-based RPGs.
Do, like, two different series type of thing?
Well,
I mean,
alternate games or something?
Maybe,
I guess the question there is then, you know, do the Kasuga games become the mainline Yakuza and the beat-em-ups become the spin-off, or vice versa?
Maybe, because, like, the reason I bring that up is because Judgment came out, like, last year, right? And Judgment is very much kind of a more traditional Yakuza game in terms of gameplay, right? It's an open world, explore, beat 'em up. You know, you can switch styles, but the thing that they changed there is the protagonist. The protagonist is not even a Yakuza. They are not even, like, associated with crime in, like, well, I mean, they associate with criminals, but they are not, like, associated with the crime family in any, like, notable way. And I found that worked as well. Like, even with the combat system being the same, I found that to also be a pretty refreshing change of pace. So I could definitely see them, like, doing, like, an alternating between, like, this year is Judgment 2, next year is, you know, Like a Dragon 2, or whatever.
I mean, I think that as time has gone by, you know, the number of stories you can tell within the very strict framework of what that game thinks is a Yakuza is kind of stifling in some sense. You know.
But that is why I do think, but I do agree with that, Zig, and that is kind of why I think I have been digging the last couple of games from that studio, because they feel like efforts on that studio's part to try to work within that framework, which I think is extremely likable and really well done, but find new ways to explore that space.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so far, once you get out of the prologue, this game has not really been that related to the Yakuza. I mean, it's about, I mean,
Homeless
G is a
people.
little deeper in the game. Maybe things loop around.
I got bad
later.
news for you, Jill.
But, you know, it's about, you know, I think thematically they're trying to paint this picture of, you know, both the Yakuza and the cops are bad, and the real heroes are the, you know, the poor people out in the streets trying to hustle and make a living, right? But, feel free to shoot me down, G. Destroy my hopes and dreams on that one. But I feel like that is the main theme of the game,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Like,
I think it is good for you to talk through this now when you've only played as far as you have.
All right.
Okay, so here's the thing. You're totally right, Jill, and I do agree that the thing this game does really strongly is that, like, Kasuga is a really likable guy. He's an idiot. He's, like, the dumbest protagonist in the history of this franchise.
He's actually dumber than Kiryu, which is
like, I would go as far as say that later in the game, he is dumb to the detriment of the story in a couple places, but, like, he is a likable goofball though, like, and he's also an active protagonist. He pursues things. He is not, like, entirely reactive. He is not like a Kiryu who just, like, stands in the street waiting for shit to happen to him.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sometimes that is very charming, but occasionally it did feel a little bit like Kiryu was kind of a passenger in his own game a lot of the time.
Yes, yeah, and to a degree, I think that over the course of, like, the 7 games which starred Kiryu, that writing team, like, finally discovered how to make that work. Like, I think a lot of us here played Yakuza 0, where we found, like, Kiryu's brand of stoicism to be extremely charming, but Yeah, as someone who's played...
it helps in Zero as well that they also have Majima on the other side, who is a bit more proactive, even before he's kind of psycho.
It's astounding that is the only game in which Majima is playable. But, yeah, like, so as someone who's played Zero, Kiwami 1 and 2, and 6, like... Yeah, let me tell you, like, the thing that, like... Kiryu doesn't really expand as a character, and so Kasuga is a really refreshing change of pace. The thing I would say about that game that, like, maybe it bothers me, but I also admire it, is Yakuza 7, or Like a Dragon. I don't fucking know what to call it. I keep calling it 7, but, like, I know Like a Dragon is its Western title.
It's actually because in Japan that series is not called Yakuza.
No,
it's called
Dokusoku. I know it. I know this trivia bit. Just believe me, I know it's
Dynasty Warriors.
It is a Resident Evil Biohazard situation.
Yes.
I do understand that. It's just for the sake of brevity, I don't know what to call it. But
Dynasty Warriors.
But the thing that I admire, but also I think maybe it makes this game more of a tightrope balance, is that Yakuza 7 is the game that I think more than any other is like deeply concerned with Japanese society and saying something about Japanese society. And in many ways, you know, it's the big P word that all the gamers hate. It's political. Like, it's...
Oh, no.
It's saying something about Japanese politics, about the way it's run.
Not my organized crime.
Don't be silly, G. Video games can't be political. Except for that one time Majima decided the tax code of Japan.
Yeah, of course, clearly, yes. Yakuza famously apolitical, except for all those times Kiryu saved the Japanese government.
But this is definitely a lot more overtly political.
Yeah, they make it clear from...
As soon as Bleach Japan showed up, I was like, "Oh man, we're going here." Huh?
Right, like the game. One of the game's primary antagonists is an organization that is like a group of moralistic crusaders who are trying to root out, like, you know, illegal immigrants and sex work in the city. Like, they were trying to clean up the city. So
just the dudes were on the boat in Japan Sinks.
Kind of, yeah. Like, it is kind of like that. Like nationalist Puritans who have a very, like, obvious moral agenda and are willing to do some, like, very, like, hypocritically amoral things to achieve it. Yeah, like, I mean, the protagonist himself is, like, intentionally made to be, like, the inverse of Kiryu. Like, his jacket is maroon, you know, like, and his tie is, like, is inverted, right? Like, he is intended to be, like, the inverse of Kiryu, but even in, like, more interesting ways of, like, Kiryu and Kasuga are both orphans, but Kiryu is, like, the idealized Showa-era orphan of, like, gruff dude raised by, like, the equivalent of Yakuza royalty, who, like, yeah, he's an orphan, but also, let's be real, like, Kiryu, like, had a perfectly, like, normal childhood, basically. Whereas, like, Kasuga is also an orphan, but he was raised in a soapland, which, for those not familiar, is, I mean, it's a place where Japanese sex work happens. You know, it's a brothel, so to speak. You know, he was raised by prostitutes. He's, you know, he is a man who, like, empathizes with the homeless and immigrants. Like, he is a, you know, he is presented and stylizes himself as, like, a protector of, like, Japan's underclass, a group of people who, in actual real Japanese society, have long been, like, marginalized or, you know, outright ignored, you know, by that society as a whole.
I mean, I think we can safely say that it's not just Japanese society who does that.
No, definitely not. But I do want to, like, lean into that a bit because, you know, they even get into, like, an aspect of, like, you know, the Zainichi in Japan, right? Like,
right, the caste system.
Right, like, people, or more specifically, like, immigrants who were brought to Japan, like, generations ago. So these are people who were born in Japan, right? Like, who are ethnically Korean or Chinese usually, born in Japan. Some don't even know their original mother language. Like, they get into this. Some of the guys you talk to, immigrants, don't speak Korean or Chinese. They don't, because they've been raised in Japan their whole lives. But they're still not seen as citizens. They are still not seen as, like, people who are afforded the same legal rights as others, despite being born in that country, speaking that language, and they get into that, and it's like, I don't even know anime that like have been willing to like tread into those waters. It's
right, like that very specific thing is not something you see come up very often.
I mean, anime is generally not, it tends to lean towards the fantastical. Even overtly political anime tends to focus on the high end of politics rather than the man in the street.
And I think because of all those aspects work so well, this is a very long-winded way to get back to also what is maybe one of my concerns about this game, is that because it's so much more serious, the aspects of it that really miss for me. Like, just to talk about like the parts that like only that Joe would be familiar with, like a lot of the plot is motivated by the death of a person that Kasuga meets, and this dude for like all like 15 minutes, maybe less in terms of like
it's probably less
time.
than 15 minutes.
Like,
yeah,
you barely know this guy, and his first impression is extremely negative. He's an extremely abrasive like individual. Like, he's an asshole. Like, totally. Like, there's no way around it.
I mean, we can say he's somebody running a soap land.
He runs a soap land, right? Yeah, and he treats his employees like shit.
Right.
And he runs his place like garbage. And despite all that, like, so when he gets killed in the story, there's like a minor spoiler, but like, look, it's a Yakuza game. This shit's coming from a mile away. Like, Kasuga's moral outrage feels really misplaced, because the guy didn't deserve to get killed. Like, he didn't deserve to be murdered. He wasn't that evil, but he wasn't like a good person. But
right.
Kasuga like moralizes and gives speeches about this guy, about how, the only reason why he like, emotionally abused his prostitute employees is because that's just tough love in this industry. That's what a strong man who works in the sex work industry does. Like, that's the right thing for a pimp to do, is to be hard on his hoes. And it's like, this is like really like, to a Western perspective, this is a very off-putting thing to say, and it very much feels like, this was written by Japanese writers with a very specific like conception of Japanese masculinity, right? Like, in the underworld you need to be a hard man, and a hard man is a good man, and
yeah, they definitely, because up to that point I felt like they were trying to go for a more kind of nuanced take of, yes, this guy did some bad stuff, but like you said, he didn't deserve to be murdered. He also did some good things. He was a more of a complex. It was more of a complex individual. But when he dies, Ichi's just like, how dare they kill this wonderful man? We have to avenge him, basically.
Right,
it's like, whoa, let's
like,
pump the brakes here, folks.
Right, like, his desire for revenge is not unwarranted. Again, like, I am being a little unfair here. The guy we're talking about was a legitimately like morally complex character who does some legitimately like good and benevolent things for very specific people in his lives.
Right, because we do see some of the people that worked for him, who also thought he was a bastard, but also had some affection for him and things like that. So there was areas to explore there, but it just feels like they swung too hard in the other
the moral outrage
direction.
I think that there's a way to work that into the story. If you want to dig deep on why Ichiban feels particular affection for this guy and explain why he wants to overlook some of this guy's moral failings, but I'm guessing that the story doesn't really do that.
Well, I think there is some implication, because Ichi grew up in a soap land and was essentially raised by a guy like this, that he's maybe a little more zealous about it.
Right, okay, but like sometimes subtext doesn't quite cut it, if you know.
And that's the thing. So here's the actual thing that like that becomes like my issue with the game. Like, and again, this is minor because like Yakuza is like the only series in the world where I said this in our Discord, where I can ping pong from I have real issues about this game's personal politics to this game should be game of the year.
Right.
And I really like this game. It actually still might be my game of the year, but I do have to bring this up. It's like, so that is how it's all portrayed in the original Japanese language. Is like Kasuga's like moral outrage is primarily based in like his belief in like the inherent goodness of this person and the inherent injustice of their death. As background, I haven't been watching it actively. I've had it playing in the background while I work on other stuff. I have been watching a Let's Play of this game with the English dub on, just like out of curiosity. First of all, it's actually surprisingly good. They got George Takei. It's kind of there's some like surprisingly like good roles in the English dub of Yakuza Like a Dragon. But
is this the first time one of those games has been dubbed since the original Yakuza?
No,
Judgment had a dub.
Judgment
okay.
also had
All
a
right,
dub,
yeah, I
yes.
guess that counts by
And here's the thing, like, because the Yakuza games, they don't use dub titles, right? Like, they wrote an entirely new script for the dub, right? Like, or the other way around. They wrote a different, like, actual written script for the sub and the dub of this game.
Right.
And I know some gamers out there are going to hear this and, like, call this, like, revisionism. They're going to call this, like, censorship. But the thing that the Yakuza dub actually did that I liked a lot more is that they made, like, to echo what you said, Zig, they made the subtext text. So, like, they didn't, like, necessarily, like, add entirely new lines, but, like, they kind of, like, massaged the language. So, like, even though Kasuga is still, like, morally outraged at the death of this, like, character, it's framed less as, like, this is a moral outrage and more, this is an injustice because this person didn't deserve to die. Like, he was a jerk, he was morally complex, but not to the degree where he deserved to be murdered. And that's the injustice of the situation, is that people like him, who are not necessarily morally good, but exist on the margins of society, like, they don't deserve to just be, like, indiscriminately murdered for no good reason. And the dub framing it that way, I was like, that's actually the text, that's actually, like, the subtext I wanted from this story bit. Like, that is,
right.
like, hinted at in the original Japanese, but is made much more apparent in the English dub. Like, and
yeah, I mean, that opens up a real interesting conversation about, which I don't know if we have time to dive super
right.
deep into.
I don't think
but,
so
like,
either. We should probably, like, close this conversation soon
But
anyways,
but no, I mean, if the goal of, and we're talking about maybe some of the the subbed version of it is kind of leaning more on a Japanese cultural understanding of things or something. I don't know, but if the goal of your localization, particularly in a dub, is to make it work for your target audience, that language that you're targeting, then
yeah,
it's a good job, right?
no,
But,
and I think it does work well. Like, it just makes the whole thing a little bit easier to swallow, from a Western perspective.
right. Yeah, I think overall it kind of points to, can a game like Yakuza, that's perhaps not usually known for its subtleties, handle some of these complex topics? And maybe the answer is maybe.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I
don't know if there's a black and white yes or no answer on that.
Yeah,
but
I will say that, like, again, I really like the game. It's very likable. Like, the characters are very warm in a way that's, like, very, very fun to interact with them. I've met some new. I've gotten all the party members now. So, like, I have them all,
Right.
and, like, some of the late game party members are fucking wild. Like, I won't spoil them, but, like, oh man, like.
Yeah, I still only have the first 4.
Right, you basically have, like, the Persona 4 equivalent, like, Scooby Gang core squad, but, like,
Right.
I've gotten, like, your like late game equivalents, right? Like your Magus or whatever equivalent, and
Naoto or whatever.
yeah, and man, they're kind of wild because one of them was a character in Yakuza 6 who explicitly got shot in the head and died. Like,
Okay, sure, that's one way to
Like,
do it.
like they did not like
As you
fucking
do,
like.
alright.
They did not do the, like, Geese Howard fall off the tower and they never found the body. They did not, like, go down with the ship. They were, explicitly shot in the head. You saw the bullet exit their skull.
Yeah.
Like, and this dude is just here.
Man.
This guy's just here in this game. He's a party member, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here?
I kind of hope they just never explain.
I think they will. His social link seems to imply they're going to get into it soon, but
yeah.
I'm just like...
I mean, there are again...
Oh, right. This game has social links, by the way.
This is a Persona game. This is Persona 6. I know the jokes have been floating around for that, but in a lot of ways you can see the Persona influence on it.
This is boomer Persona 6.
So
yeah, and I met another dude where I don't even want to like describe him because because if I describe him, you will instantly recognize him when he shows up, but like the last party member I really, really like for many of the reasons for... think about who is the most popular fan favorite character in Yakuza. What would happen if they introduce a character that was very similar to that character in his mannerisms and stylings, and he was a party member. And
yeah.
Also, both the last two party members are basically different flavors of the Final Fantasy monk class, so I really appreciate that. Like, they both punch people, which is very fun.
Well, hold on. Punching people in Yakuza...
I mean, yes, everybody punches people, but one of them, like...
There's surprisingly less punching in this game than
so when they introduce these last two party members, are the two that feel the most like actual characters from the Yakuza franchise. You know, like one of them, like, when I say two different flavors, like one of them like fights barehanded but is like doing like, you know, Solid Snake CQC, and the other one fights barehanded but is like using kung fu, and it's very fun to watch them go.
Right, most of your party members are like Yakuza sub-story characters.
Yeah.
In the early parts, but yeah. All right. Well, you know, I will second your feelings on it, G, particularly that this is a very good game. I'm enjoying it a lot, even though I'm not as far as you are yet. So I'm looking forward to finishing it up sometime within the next year.
Those games are long.
Well,
they are indeed long.
The last thing I'll ask you, wait, you're in chapter 5, so that means...
I'm hoping I'm near the end of chapter 5 because I feel like I've been in chapter 5 a long time. But
does the name Mabuchi ring any bells?
Yes, I'm looking for him.
Okay, all right. Tell me, not here, but just tell me when you get to spoilers. Tell me when you get to his boss fight, because...
Well, I'm assuming, yes, I'm going to fight him at some point if I'm looking for him.
The fucking music. Shout-outs to Mabuchi's boss fight theme. It's maybe one of the best tracks I've ever heard in this whole franchise.
All right.
It's really fucking good.
I'll let you know when we get to that part.
But that's it.
All right. So, couple other games we wanted to shout out here. Iro, you recently finished 13 Sentinels. I finally looked up how to say it's. I think it is supposed to be Aegis Rim.
So it is Aegis. Okay.
They say in the English dub they say Aegis.
Yeah, I think it's supposed
Aegis.
to be like an E
it's
sound,
Aegis.
not an A
That's how
sound.
you pronounce that.
Yeah. So
we all can't help that.
I won't be able to talk about this for 30 minutes, but
no. Even before you played it, Iro, I've heard everybody say it's a game that's very easy to spoil, and there's not a whole lot you can say about it. But
yes,
you did like it, though, right?
I did. I have Platinum Trophy, which was pretty easy Platinum to get. I've played the whole game. For those unfamiliar, 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim is developed by Vanillaware, which is the studio who made Odin Sphere, Grim Grimoire, Murmasa Demon Blade, Dragon's Crown. So their whole wheelhouse is like beautiful,
super detailed, 2D
beautiful
art.
2D art basically, and usually fantasy stuff. And this is their first like sci-fi foray. And
now,
go ahead.
The one question I always had in this game is this like more of a visual novel than a game?
I would say so.
Or...
Yes.
Okay.
I think the persistent issue I had with say Odin Sphere or Murmasa is. The stories were, like, fine, but B, you had to do a lot of tedious gameplay to get to the story bits.
I didn't particularly
Right,
enjoy
yeah.
playing those games. Looking at them, yes.
Yeah,
I have a soft spot for Odin Sphere. I think that like
sure.
that game
And
does
the
actually
remake did
legitimately
like improve it a lot.
play pretty well.
But
Muramasa though, yes, that game is definitely
Yeah,
like.
But it sounds like this basically cuts out the tedious gameplay and let's
I
just get
think
to the story.
The story to gameplay ratio is way more lopsided in favor of story in Aegis Rim, which I think is a good thing. The battles are there and they are fine. They have their moments. There's a couple of battles that I really enjoyed, for their set piece value, I would say. And you can freely like tune the difficulty up or down with no penalties or anything. It's like if you really don't care, you can just set it to casual mode and blaze through. But yeah,
Although you're saying it was still pretty easy on normal for you.
on normal I S ranked every stage except for basically the penultimate stage on my first try.
Yeah. Although Iro is secretly better at video games than any of us, but
Everybody says that, and they're always wrong.
It doesn't take much to be better at video games than me, it must be said.
But yeah, it is kind of hard to talk about the story without spoiling.
but that's that is the strong point, though. Is the story?
If you like seeing because there's 13 main characters, and they all have their like plot thread, and some are better than others. But if you like how in Odin Sphere you'd play a character story and see the other main character off in the back doing something else, you hear the back half of their conversation, and you go, wait,
Right.
no, I want to hear more about that.
Hero, the way you sold, I mean, I was already like, I mean, I've actually owned this game for longer than Hero has, but I've been very busy these past couple of months and haven't really had a chance to play it. And then Yakuza happened, you know.
Yep.
Look, I had to fight that chimpanzee in a construction vehicle.
It's true, yes.
But
I thought we were done on my Yakuza.
but the thing that you told me that I think really had me interested in this game, Arrow, is you said that it does the thing that like the best plot twists do of when you get introduced when the game throws a plot twist at you, it makes you retroactively reevaluate
Yes.
everything you had seen
I
prior.
think there's a lot of that of
Which
you're playing for a while and you think you know what's going on, and then somebody says a thing and you go, "Excuse me? Can we talk about that?" No, wait. Then if that's true, then what about this? What about that? Is this person even who they say they are? Am I even who? Is the character I'm playing as even who they think they are? Like,
right? Is the moon even real?
yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot of that. If you like puzzle box sort of narratives, told in such a way that you're constantly thinking about where these things stick together, I think you'll like it.
Would you say that, like, and I know this is very reductive, but would you say that, like, in terms of its appeal as, like, an experience, that Aegis Rim is maybe, like, akin to something like a 999? You know what I mean? Like, a very, like,
absolutely.
plot twist heavy visual novel with some gameplay aspects to it, of course, but like the main appeal is like untangling the kind of labyrinth of
I think I've seen comparisons to Zero Escape and such in how the narrative is built, and I think they are apt comparisons. And
interesting.
But yes, there are giant robots in the game. They're not really that many giant robots in the game.
Yeah, I mean, it is supposed to be like modern high school with robots type of setting.
Showa era. If you are the type,
Showa era.
If you are the type of person who really likes Megazone 23 or Across Do You Remember Love or like Bubble Crisis or something, like
some kind of 80s mecha.
Yes, specifically like 80s mecha with like a girl focus. Does that make sense?
No, I get you. Yeah, like the very specific era of like OVA, like very specific era of anime, like that was being made. Like the kind of like vanity project that could only exist during the bubble period.
Yes, that game loves the Showa era.
That sounds good.
And just to continue the thread of maybe some stuff in there that made me go, I don't know about this. There is a little bit of that in there, I would say.
Well, I mean, look, it's anime. Like, it's an anime video game, right? Like,
yeah.
You go in sort of knowing that, like, hey,
yeah,
certain tropes you just
right. There's a non-zero amount of Glorious Nihon.
Oh yeah,
in there.
Oh, that's what you mean.
I mean, Vanillaware do have some history with that.
Yeah.
So.
Wait, do they? Was Muramasa that
Well,
I mean,
no, but
Muramasa's about
I think it's more the staff who are have been.
Were you talking problematic?
Yeah, it's Kamitani.
Comments or statements.
I know
whatever,
Kamitani's horny. I didn't know he was. I don't know. I didn't know he was like what? Is he a Shinzo Abe guy? Like is
no,
he...
but I don't think we've gotten into the. I don't know if we specifically got into the glorious
it's like
stuff, but
it doesn't get super hard, but it's like there's like
raise an eyebrow.
There's like one or two specific characters.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I can believe that. I mean, hell, like we want to like backpedal just a tiny bit. Like even the Yakuza series has sometimes been victim to like a little bit of there's always a little bit of a subtext of like
a little bit of nationalism.
Yeah,
in there
like
for
all
me,
criminals are criminals, but Japanese criminals are slightly better, or way are much better than other criminals.
And you do kind of have to like, it is about horny teens basically.
Sure,
you have to be okay with teens being horny for other teens.
Look, man, you put 13 teens together in a giant robot, like you know, things are gonna happen.
That's teenagers for you,
Indeed.
but all right. I mean,
I do recommend it. I liked it a lot.
A recommendation from Iro means a lot. Yes. So
again, everybody always says that, and I think they're always wrong.
I have not actually purchased the game, but it has been on my radar since it's been out. So I will probably get to it at some point. And I guess if G already has it, then
I just need to actually play it.
Just a matter of time.
I'm definitely going to get to it as well, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard nothing but universal praise.
Yeah, like it is definitely one of those games where, for better or worse, it gets praised in a very specific way by a very specific crowd. Where you're like, all right, I should probably pay attention to this.
It does sound like something in our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Right? But all right, and then final bit of game talk. Zig, you started playing Death Stranding like this past week or something.
Most relevant game.
Yeah, well, I mean
that's only like a year old or something.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I've wanted to play it for a while, but when it came out, I didn't have a PS4, and then one thing and another. So I've gone into this almost completely blind because I've avoided spoilers for the most part, and the first couple of hours of that game is just a non-stop series of increasingly insane things happening. It's very odd. It's very weird, and I think
I would have never guessed.
Yeah, odd that.
I mean, a lot of this discourse has been done before, but
I think one thing which is a positive is that because I have heard some of the discourse surrounding it, and because I kind of knew what to expect in terms of gameplay. Because, spoilers, that game is basically about moving from point A to point B, and that's kind of it. And so I think perhaps I did not experience the like sense of anticlimax that a lot of people did, and I kind of enjoy just the process of getting from point A to point B, and I think it is a fascinating canvas for Kojima to paint his increasingly insane theories on, and obviously the production values are through the roof. It runs really nicely on PC. If you have one of the RTX NVIDIA cards, it supports their fancy deep layer super sampling.
Ooh,
or is it deep learning super sampling? I can't. DLSS.
Yeah,
anyway,
DLSS,
which basically means that like it can run at 4K 60 on pretty much anything. So
that's cool.
It's very impressive, and I am enjoying just how sort of wild and out of left field it gets. It definitely feels like it definitely feels like they took the shackles off of Kojima to a certain extent, and the result is just, even more bonkers insanity than you might expect.
Well, I mean, he wasn't really answering to anybody on this one, right? This was
No, I mean, there's been a lot of speculation that next time perhaps they won't give him quite so much money or unlimited creative control, but it's fun seeing that.
Did you know already that the game was about delivering mail? Well, basically.
I mean, I that's the thing, I knew that it was about package delivery, basically.
Okay.
And I knew like the bare bones of what the gameplay is, which is you are, trekking across hills and valleys and rivers and stuff to deliver these
while holding
packages.
down the LT and RT button 24/7.
Yeah, well, not necessarily, but like I said, I think, to me at least, the Metal Gear games have always been serviceable video games with fascinating wrappers, and this very much fits into that mold.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I think you've definitely gotten to the heart of it, Zig. Eero and I both played that game. Neither of us finished it for
I will one day.
varying reasons. Will you? Will we, Eero? Be honest.
Hey, yeah, look, my PS4 is on now again. Therefore...
it's been so long that I have legitimately thought about just getting it again on PC and just, booting up Cheat Engine.
Oh, hell yeah.
The problem is, there are aspects of that game that are so time-consuming that even Cheat Engine probably could not fix,
There's speed hacks and shit, probably.
Yeah, but it's more look, man, even if I had 1 billion concrete, I still have to, physically carry that concrete, to the location.
I'm sure there's some weird hack to increase your carry capacity 1,000 times or something.
Yeah, I probably. I hope there is, because, yes, if I ever do play that game, I'd like to get back to where I was. It's just, anyways, Death Stranding, was a really, weirdly compelling game, right? The idea of, transporting goods from point A to point B in some ways is, the original video game task, right? In a lot of ways, even more than, kill the enemy, it's take the thing from A to B, right?
Eat the pellets.
That is what Super Mario Brothers is, right? To go from A to B. And there's a lot, I think, that Death Stranding does really, really interestingly, and yes, it is definitely really fascinating as this artifice of Kojima's uncompromised vision of what a video game could be.
Right, I might be outraged if this had been the big thing I was waiting for years.
No, I mean, I believe me. I don't think Eero or I went into it like that. I think we knew going into this.
A lot of people did.
Some people definitely went into it like that.
But the thing that I think even for people us who can appreciate that weirdness, where maybe that game, it doesn't fall apart, but definitely maybe struggles a bit, is it front loads so much of that Kojima weirdness, that really likable, strange quality to his writing and characters. And then it sort of pulls an MGS5 of well, now play 20 hours before your next cutscene, It's
right.
It's a little unfortunate because some of those characters are legitimately really interesting and very odd and memorable, but then it's all right, Sam, I'll see you in 15 in-game hours before our next minute-long cutscene, and it's all right,
On the other hand, I heard that the ending of that game is literally an unbroken 90-minute cutscene.
I mean, what else is new?
I know, right? Exactly.
That's fine. I like
that kind of speaks to our biggest problem with video games as adults is how do we just find time to do all this, right?
Right.
Yes.
Right,
I mean,
I'm fine if Kojima wants a 90-minute cutscene at the end of his game. What I wished he would do is maybe put maybe 5 to 10 minutes of those cutscenes throughout the rest of the middle of it, because
instead of just
give me those story breadcrumbs, man.
It's a little bit of an MGS5 situation of oh man, all this interesting story. All right, go play the game for 30 hours.
I mean, I will say that I think that the moment-to-moment action of MGS5 was sufficiently good that I didn't feel it so much, and I think it will be interesting to see if the systems because again, I'm only about 3.5 hours into the game.
Right, so you haven't even a big
I don't
thing
have
about
the
that
bike,
game,
I don't have the truck, anything like that.
Right, the big thing about that game in many ways is its removal of friction over time. I think it's a very dangerous thing to do in your game of like purposely making it unfun to play so that it feels better when it becomes fun to play. But like that is definitely what Death Stranding kind of does, is like make you kind of like trudge through the shit for like a few hours, and then when you finally get like the thing that makes your life easier, it feels like a revelation.
I will say that it has a certain quality which I am attracted to in games, which I don't know is universal, but the sense of, desolation, the majestic hugeness of it is, to me, very attractive. The kind of the windswept aesthetic, the rain.
Oh yeah, no, the environments are great, even if it looks literally nothing like actual America. But
well, you see, G, after the Death Stranding.
Yes,
All right.
Yeah. No, but I'm interested, and I'd much rather it be a bad, interesting game than a boring, normal one, if that makes sense. So I'll keep going, and, maybe I will turn on it, maybe I won't, but I'm sufficiently intrigued at the moment to want to keep going.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I mean, that's another one I kind of always wanted to try, but opinions have definitely been divisive on it. From what you guys have told me, it sounds like I might enjoy it, but I don't know. Again, it always comes back down to the time thing too.
Yeah.
But
well, Jill, do you like browser game QWOP?
What?
Well, okay, never mind. If you don't know me and know what I'm talking about, it's not worth continuing this bit.
It's not a bad comparison, actually.
I'm sorry, I think we totally sandbagged that.
No, it's fine.
Well, I guess Zig understood. So,
Sure.
Anyway, we need to move
I'm
on.
of a certain generation.
We have to meet our quota for talking about anime. So
yeah, let's move on to something a lot less interesting.
We'll do our normal touch in with Great Pretender. I don't want to rehash all the same stuff we say every time about this, but
it's the same problem.
Show.
It's the same problems we said already.
Things have not changed so we're talking specifically. You guys watched 2 more episodes,
yes.
right? Like I did.
Yes.
Episodes 20 and 21.
Mm-hmm.
Yup.
And I feel like we're just going through the motions.
Yep.
Nothing happened in this, so it was filling in the rest of the backstory up to when Laurent recruits Makoto. Everything happens exactly the way you expect it to happen, including before and after that moment.
Yup.
And we talked about it, the issue of it being everything was all according to plan from the beginning. And
it retroactively makes the rest of the show worse when you just reveal that, everything since episode 1 was just all part of the Keikaku. Like
right.
It was all part of the plan. Every aspect was planned to the nth degree.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like,
they still basically say, though, that Makoto isn't in on it, right?
and that's the really shitty thing. Like, that is
right,
the thing that,
yes.
I apologize if I'm like weirdly morally outraged at this show.
Oh no, I'm totally with you on this.
They have done a really fucked up thing to Makoto. Like, it's really actually kind of sick. Like, I like these people are villains, and not even villains,
including his own father.
Right. Like these people aren't even villains in the way that like fucking like Lupin and his crew are villains. These are like legitimately villainous individuals. Like these are like morally black-hearted people.
But we're not supposed to think they are.
Right. Like we're supposed to think like it's all part of the scheme, and it's like, fuck you. You emotionally tortured this man for like 6 months. Like, when they see, when Lauren is giving a speech about, like, Makoto will make a great con man, essentially because he's a rube, like, who's easy to trick. It's like, what the fuck? Like, it's...
Yeah.
Right.
It's really
I'm just,
gross.
like, so...
Like, the last time it worked was in the first arc only, right? Like, and that was based on... That was kind of based on the assumption that he would then be let in on all the rest of the plans, right?
But no, like they keep like emphasizing that. Oh, the only thing Makoto is good for is that he's so like fucking straight and narrow that it makes it
if they actually let him
easy.
in on the plan, it would ruin everything.
Right, that it's super easy to just fuck with him, and I don't know. It's really
I don't buy that at all.
I don't like it. I don't like it in the slightest, and like not even just because of like what it does to Makoto as a character, but also because like. Again, it makes the heists boring. Like, Laurent never encounters any kind of struggle, never encounters any sort of obstacle, right? Like, they make it extremely clear that, like, explicitly, canonically, everything that has happened in this show up till now was all part of Lawrence's plan. Like, he planned every single aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like when I forget which episode it was, when we do see Cynthia and Abby show up again, like I forgot that they quote unquote died.
Right,
like
because
it was that like inconsequential at that point, because like I knew they were fine.
Of course like
so when they show back up again, I completely forgot. I was like, oh right, they were supposed to be dead, and like
right, you forget to even react. Like it's for a show about heists, for a show that is supposed to be about the twists and turns of, like, you know, being a confidence man, like it's so fucking predictable. Like, even the flashback, right? Even the flashback about, like, Lawrence's tragic past, about Dorothy. I don't even think Dorothy's dead. I really don't. Like, I can't believe it, because it's like,
we have no reason to trust the show about literally anything.
Right, yeah. Like, there's nowhere where we can take this show's word for anything it says.
Right.
And
in the end, it's going to be of all her plan all along, right? Like,
so them trying to build up the tension in the latest episode of, like, where does Makoto's loyalty lie? You know, it's like, it's not. I don't care. In fact, I don't even care about whether he. Here's the thing, his loyalty doesn't matter, because
he's kind of justified at this point to do whatever he wants.
No, not only that. Not only is he completely justified doing whatever he wants, but I'm willing to bet, regardless of where his loyalty is, that's part of Lawrence's plan too. Right.
Like,
if he betrays, that was part of Lawrence's plan. If he stays loyal, that was part of Lawrence's plan. Like, it doesn't even matter. Like, that's the actual thing. That's the actual part where this show really fucked up as a heist story. Like, one of the best parts of a good heist story is sometimes, like,
how do we deal with this?
Yes, but where do the loyalties of the individual members of the crew lie, right? Like, there's always a mole. There's always, like, someone whose loyalties are, like, you know, misplaced. It's always, like, at the last minute, like, who will they pull the trigger on? And the problem with this is that we can't even have that tension, because it doesn't matter. Like, either way, Lawrence's plan will probably still go off without a hitch, right? So, like, like, I fucking guarantee you, in the penultimate episode, so the next episode, something will quote unquote go wrong, and they will frame it as, Lawrence's time, his luck has finally run out. Like, it's all coming down.
I think they'll frame it as, Makoto is truly a baddie now, and called the Yakuza in or something to take down Lawrence's scheme, except that will again be part of the plan.
It was all right, and that's what I mean, right? Is like they'll try to build up some tension, and then in the last episode it'll be like, nah, it was all part of the scheme all along.
I mean, when you have like seemingly omnipotent characters, you tend to cast them as villains, right? Because the whole point is that you want somebody to break the facade.
But that's the problem. Laurent is still, like, even now, and especially now with this flashback, he is firmly, unequivocally the hero of the story. Like, to a very disgustingly boring degree. Like,
yeah, I like. I think I said in our chat, like, I'm just emotionally checked out of this show at this point.
Yeah.
There's nothing they can do. There's 2 episodes left or something. There's nothing they can do at this point, I think, is going to change my mind on it. I can just hope that they don't, like, totally make it worse or something. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
I'm basically
we just gotta. Yeah. I mean, I'm just watching it because I've come this far. We got to finish it.
I'm waiting for, like, what's the wacky thing they pull, I guess. Except I don't I don't, like, emotionally
play the fun little jazz music thing, and as they reveal what the plan was all along. And
one thing I did want to bring up real quickly related to this is, because Iro and I were talking, and he kind of brought up a good point that, like, kind of made this all click for me, is, like, how much of, like, our issues with Great Pretender...
Go ahead.
Christ. This is why it's up to me to remember this stuff. Maybe a lot of issues with our specific issues with Great Pretender is that we did not watch this like a Netflix show.
Oh, right.
Like, we did not binge watch this. Like, how much of our problems with Great Pretender only arise because we are given time to think about this? Like, because I can imagine that the version of Great Pretender where you're watching it all in one go, your feelings about the first arc are still so fresh that by the time you get to the finale, you're still feeling good about like the spectacle of the whole artifice.
I mean,
Whereas,
I don't think that
there was a big gap between the first
that is
release
true,
and the second
but
release.
I do think that like I do wonder like because
people watching it now though have the full series,
right? Like I bring this up because I think that our feelings on the first arc are so distant now. Like there's no more goodwill from the first arc because it has been such a long time since we watched it. Whereas like, you know, because I think this is true of a lot of Netflix shows or shows designed for the next Netflix formula, where if you watch it in one full 8-hour batch, like, it's easy to kind of like gloss over the problems because you watched it all in such a short span of time that like really
they're just banking on you mentally. Just blurring everything together.
Yeah, so that mentally only the biggest highlights stand out, right? Like I think about like how like when I watched like the Netflix Daredevil show, right? It's like I think back and I'm like
kind of awful.
Or
I think I liked that, but then if I actually think about it, it's like, well, no, the problem is that I only remember the good parts because it was such a blur.
Or the
right?
the other way
So,
that's more relevant to the podcast is like Artemis. I know you're not here, Artemis, but she really disliked Japan Sinks, and she watched it all at once. Whereas we also disliked Japan Sinks, but not to the same degree, and we were like more quote unquote able to pick out like these are the parts we did like, these are the parts we didn't like, as opposed to just I hate everything about this.
Right, because we watched it over such a stretched out period of time that.
And I think Artemis was more high up on Great Pretender, and she did watch.
Right. That's also
maybe.
So
Maybe
this is just
a
proving
theory here, but
this is just proving the theories in one way or another.
I think it's like for better or worse, what you know, compared to the Netflix formula, watching something stretched out over time as a serial narrative, I don't want to say it dulls because that makes it sound like it's a worse way to watch it, but it softens both the highlights and the low points, right? Because you're given more time to internalize them. You're given more time to think about what they did right and like where the problems arise. And I think that's like maybe definitely an issue with like Great Pretender is that like honestly, the version of this that's Great Pretender, the 6-hour movie, is probably a relatively enjoyable experience, right? Because
I don't know.
I just feel like you should not like a show less the more you think about it, if that makes sense.
No, I totally agree. But what I'm saying is that how much of this show maybe was built for the Netflix, you know, formula of like, you know, if you just watch it arc, right? Like by the time
you watch
you're
this
done
as a
with the
4-episode OVA.
Yeah, like you're still thinking
I don't know
about
if anybody's thinking that hard about it when they're planning the show out, but it does seem to be kind of the end effect sometimes.
I mean, yes, I'm not saying that it is intentional, but I think that maybe that it is an unintended consequence of how the show is structured, and so for us who have watched it mostly on a weekly basis, like that gives us a long time to think about everything it's done wrong.
I mean, the other thing is like, I've had the second half sitting on my hard drive for like 3 months, and and even now it's like I have to force myself to watch it. So even having them all available, the fact that I don't want to watch it is probably saying something as well. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to move on, I think, and maybe save some of that discussion for the final thoughts when we get to that. But we do have 2 episodes left. Like I said, I don't unless something miraculous happens, I don't see how my opinion of the show is going to change.
Even if something miraculous does happen, I don't think it can retroactively fix the show. Like there are like specific things, there's specific ways in which this show has broken.
Oh well, well you see, G, we'll find out that all of the ways it was broken were all part of the plan.
It doesn't matter. Like even if they did that, it wouldn't work. Like it's too late. Like there are like just certain lines that show has narratively crossed that like you can't go back from.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I intentionally wanted to talk about Talentless Nana after this because while I feel like, well, I mean, obviously they're very different genres and different shows. I feel like this show is providing me satisfaction that I feel like I should be getting out of Great Pretender in terms of like how the show is twisting and turning and keeping me on the edge of my seat. I know Zig, you watched a little bit more.
Yeah, I watched a couple more episodes there, and
Okay.
I was honestly pretty impressed by the stuff I saw. I think
You saw the death by time
the
travel.
death by time travel is incredibly clever, and I think. I think that there are a few points. I want to talk about that episode specifically because I think there's a few points in that episode where I was like, oh no, they're wavering. They're letting it get away from them. But that ending is so smart and so, like, it's one of the very few ways that you could legitimately get out of the situation they place her in and
Right.
make it work, if that makes sense. I mean, there's some stuff about causality which doesn't quite line up, but
But we'll
Yeah.
let that slide a little bit.
yeah,
on this one.
because it is such a clever thing, and it does my favorite thing, which is it proves the writers were thinking about the whole episode because it calls back to basically the very first thing which happens in that episode, and
Right.
that gave me renewed confidence in their ability to kind of write the tension of this situation well.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the better ones, but there will be some more things that happen later.
Yeah,
for sure.
and I'm not expecting them all to be as perfectly plotted as that one, but
Right.
it proved that they can hit the highs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention. So yeah, basically in contrast to what we keep talking about with Great Pretender, it's like I don't know what's happening in this show. The main character is, they explicitly explain how the main character is explicitly in danger all the time. She does make mistakes, and then she has to kind of find a way to weasel her way out of them. And actually in the latest episodes, and I'm going to keep the spoiler free, but she actually starts to factor in fatigue. She's like, I haven't been sleeping. I'm going to slip up, and she does kind of slip up a little bit by her standards. And man, it's a wild ride. Particularly, again, I'm keeping this spoiler free, but in the latest episode 9, they managed to drop a pretty big plot twist, and then reverse the plot twist, and then reverse it back a couple times. It's like, it might be the record. It might be a record for most plot twists in an episode I've ever seen, and it's actually pretty great, including her. I'm trying to keep this spoiler free, but she's trying to pick up clues, and maybe she doesn't pick up clues the way she thinks she is, and it's real good. And
I mean, I think the best. I think the best dramas and thrillers, because this is kind of a thriller. I think the best ones allow the audience to be simultaneously one step ahead and one step behind, and that's obviously a very tricky balancing act as far as...
I mean, this one, they're making you think you're one step
ahead. Right, but you're actually one step behind.
You were actually 3 steps behind.
I mean, it's all about what kind of information you tell the audience and what kind of information you withhold from them, and that's a very tricky balance to know.
They very much are playing with that concept, and it's very hard to do, and I think they're doing a pretty good job of it. I wish the show had the production values of Great Pretender or even a good
that's
it's
kind
not
of big. It kind of looks naff. There's no way you can get around
it's average at best looking. The writings, the actual dialogue and stuff's not all that great, but just the ideas they're coming up with are so much fun. It's just we keep saying great anime trash, but yeah. I can't say too much more without spoilers, and Zig, I hope you guys catch up. I think you and Aqua
we'll do our best to catch up ASAP.
So I would recommend checking that out. Moving along, we're kind of getting short on time here, so I'm not going to say too much. I did want to mention Adachi and Shimamura, because I like that show, and I did like what they did in the last couple episodes. They had Zig, are you still watching this? Or
yeah, we're still watching. I think we're an episode or two behind, but it's not the kind of show you could really spoil. So
yeah, I mean they did. Then you guys probably got to the part where they kind of leave on the cliffhanger of her old friend showing up or something.
Right? Yeah. Yes, they pulled the
Shimamura's
childhood friend card.
Right. So I was almost guaranteed they were going to play her as the jealousy card. and I was kind of glad that they didn't do that. And it was a pretty good sequence where they didn't even really show too much of what happened, where like it was just her kind of calling back to what happened and how like awkward it was with that person that she like barely knows from elementary school or something. And she kind of contrasts that with her relationship with Adachi and kind of gives perspective on that. So I really liked that they didn't go what I thought was going to be the obvious, bring up the cute childhood friend to make the character jealous type of thing. And then they do get to the Valentine's episode, which was kind of fun. But I will say, I feel like while we're talking about bad production values, I do feel like that's kind of dropping on this show. It looked very nice in the first half, and I feel like that's kind of falling off a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely not as lavish looking as it once was.
Yeah, like it still looks okay, but I feel like they're starting to get like off model and stuff like that with it. But that's just nitpicking, I guess. I'm still enjoying it. But yeah, let's keep it moving, because I do want to get to our last two shows.
Speaking of another show that has completely given up the ghost on production values.
Dude. All right, let's talk about Magatsu, Wahrheit, whatever. I'll be honest with you guys, I did not watch the latest episode.
So I do think the latest episode kind of picks back up a little bit.
Yes, I did read your post. I did read your post, Iro, so I kind of regret not watching it. But it sounds like at least they're because the episode before that
so boring,
was like trash. Like that's why I was like, I can't. So I was like, I'm not making this a priority at the moment. But it looks like they're finally moving the plot now that we only have like 3 episodes left or something. Right?
Yeah, I think again, so much of this is now meta-contextually informed by our knowledge of the game, but like the thing that I find really interesting is that, especially in the latest episode, like I will admit, it did not go the way I thought it would, right? Like the moment they introduced like Inumeo's sister in the
I was like,
mines,
oh, she's dead this episode.
I was like, oh, this is where she dies, and this begins his descent into darkness. But no, she not only does she escape, but they even managed to kill the evil lieutenant. Like, it's almost a little too clean of an outcome, right? Like, all's well that ends well. Like, well, everything would.
And now we're buddies with the cop, and
right, or or at least allied with. This episode almost feels like the point where like the full party forms in a JRPG, right? Like, the disparate members have finally met and like agreed to travel to the capital to fight the demon lord or whatever. But the thing is that the reason that is a little interesting, right?
Because we only have a few episodes left, and like, what's going to happen? How's this going to fall apart?
Right, because these characters still need to become who they are in the game, right? Like, Inumeo still needs to become a brooding, edgy assassin or whatever, and Leo needs to become super cop or whatever. So, like, what is the thing that, like, but, again, if we didn't know anything about the game, this outcome that happens in the latest episode is like, oh, okay, like, things are working out, I guess. I mean, maybe not societally, right? Like, the society itself is still fucked, but maybe these individuals can, like, make some small positive change. But the game implies, no. Whatever happens in the next 4 episodes is not going to go well. In fact, it's only going to get worse. And so, this slight uptick in, like, positivity has me, like, all the more curious now how it all falls apart.
Yeah.
Quick question. In the anime, have we met the Emperor yet? I forget.
Like, a little bit.
Yeah.
He has appeared very briefly.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm doing all this to protect my wife and her unborn child or something.
Oh, right. So we haven't seen his son because he's not born yet, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm like, I think I wrote in the post, like, I'm sure this is relevant to the game, but I'm not going to play it, so I don't give a shit.
Right, yeah. Like,
well, I mean, do you want to know what happens in the game? I mean, at this stage, or would you prefer to just keep watching? Or have I ruined enough for you with the game?
Let's just see how the anime decides to do it at this point. But, yeah, I don't know.
But, I mean, you guys know, like G said, you guys know this is not going to end well because the game is everyone's in a bad spot. But, yeah, I mean, that's interesting with his sister. It kind of makes me think of the earlier episode when the cool mom escaped and we all thought she was going to die.
Right, yeah.
So I don't know if that's just like them.
I mean, it's like, well, if the little sister lives, then what is... I mean, I kind of hope she does, because at least then that gives Inumel hopefully a less cliche reason.
Well, here's the other thing. Do we even know? Like, we keep saying Inumel is going to become this dark, evil assassin
We've
guy.
seen the poster, like...
But, like, I know we've seen the art, but, like, do we even know, like... if that's entirely true? I mean, is that just the class he decides to go
I don't know.
I mean, look, you're right.
I've seen the promo videos positioning him as like the dark rival to Leocadio or whatever. So I don't know what to tell you, man.
Yeah, I mean, look,
maybe I am jumping to conclusions.
Right. I mean, this is also very much just that anime conditions us to like interpret visual symbols in a very specific way. Like, you see a specific silhouette.
Well,
you see a specific.
Here's the other thing. Like, I think because he's still. So I guess based on what Iroh saw from the game expansion, which again was not in the game when I was playing it.
Right.
Like, he's still part of like Headkeeper, right? Like,
I think so. Yeah.
Like, that's still Headkeeper's still a thing in the future, and like. Officially, Headkeeper are the bad guys according to the Empire and like the people in charge, but we know that they're, at least we don't think they're actually the bad guys, right? Like, so that just like,
so far in the show, I would say they are clearly the more heroic organization.
I mean, like, yeah, so, like, sure, if this game does a thing of like he looks super brooding and edgy, but he's actually like a totally chill guy, then like I would appreciate. I would be fun. I'd be like, okay, cool, fine, play with my expectations, but it's just. The way the anime has built itself, the way and what we know of the game, it just feels like, well, his start of darkness has got to show up eventually, right? So,
or is it going to be like Headkeeper actually was not good, and there actually are the bad guys, and or at least by the time the game happens, they're the bad guys.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just saying, I feel like it's not written in stone exactly what type of character Inumel ends up being in the future, but. And especially if they're taking away his very easy plot motivation here to become a bad guy. But I don't know. As you guys said, this show looks like ass now.
Oh yeah, this show looks it's fucking bad.
Yeah,
this show looks like
it was
garbo.
It was like episode 1, 2, 3 was like serviceable, and now it's just like.
Anytime anybody tries to do anything remotely actiony, it kind of falls apart really bad.
It looks bad. It's not. Yeah, it's look, the Rage of Bahamut. This ain't. And they don't got that. They don't got that map. They don't got that map of money.
Games
I wished it was. I wish I wanted this to be Rage of Bahamut again. Like
Arrow. We want everything to be Rage of Bahamut.
I know.
Like,
look,
we everything. Like everything is everything. Literally everything would be notably improved if it was Rage of Bahamut instead. Like.
And even that turned out bad.
Look, we don't talk about season 2. We don't talk about season 2.
And we can't pretend it doesn't exist. Yeah, so I don't know. We've got this is just one core, right? So
I think so.
As far as we know.
God, if this turns out to be 2 core, I'm gonna be like, what are you doing?
They don't got the money for 2 cores. Let me tell you.
Yeah. They're not gonna. The studio's gonna catch fire if it's not already.
This is what the show looks like now. Oh man, imagine what it looks like fucking at episode 20.
It just seems like they have so much ground to cover though for like 3 episodes or whatever, which is not.
I mean, here's the thing. When Aaron and I say we're more interested in the show now, that is not us saying we have higher hopes for it. I think it is. If this ends up being a car crash, it is now an immediately more interesting car crash to watch.
Yeah,
is the way I would put it.
Right.
Basically.
All right. Well, let's move along then and finish off with our Akudama Drive talk.
Yo,
still the show of the season for sure, I'd say.
Akudama Drive is so fucking good. Holy shit!
Can I just point out one thing? Have you guys have all noticed the episode titles or movies?
Yeah.
I think it would be hard not to notice that.
Yeah, fuck, man. I mean,
it's just we haven't talked about it, but I think it's kind of cool how and I'll save some of these comments for later, but. I like how, as they've kind of killed off some of the characters, like that episode became like that type of movie.
Yeah,
like,
no, totally.
They've done a fairly
like
good.
If you look at like the Brawler episode versus what happens with Cutthroat, Like it becomes like a totally different like.
I mean,
movie,
there
basically.
are multiple shots in the episode called The Shining,
That are
which are
explicit,
Oh
explicitly
yeah, with that
shots
one specifically,
from
they
The
just straight up
Shining.
take The Shining.
Yeah,
right?
but I
They
mean,
take up
even the
straight
shots
from
that
right.
don't, it is very much like very obviously leaning.
It turns
into
into like a
that,
horror
like,
thriller
right,
thing as opposed to
suspenseful, yeah.
right.
Like, and it works. I think it does work. Like, I know I've been like banging this drum for like the last few episodes, and it's just that my prediction, Kate, turned out to be a few episodes late. But like, you know, they finally get into like, Cutthroat is more of a liability than an asset in this crew, right? And like that kind of comes to a head in the latest episode. But before we do that, do we want to talk about the prior episode, which I think is also really excellent?
I think what surprised me the most about that episode and also the subsequent episodes is how effortlessly the show has shifted just into being a straight up drama. Like it's still a very hyperactive, over the top drama, but it's become less of a joke and more of like a genuine story with genuine stakes at this point.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I don't know how long this drama thing will stick. This more dramatic angle will stick. But yes, for these two episodes, especially the first of the two, where Swindler is on the run with the sister, and
she's got to do some things.
Yeah, because she's wanted, right? Like, I mean, I feel like it was a bit of a lapse in judgment here. Like, oh, let me pay with like my government signed credit card. I just briefly forgot that I am a wanted criminal now.
The thing that struck me with this episode is that like up until now, and still now, of course, the show is like extremely violent, but like its ability to switch from like the almost comical violence of we are mowing down these executioners and ripping their arms off and shit, to the like actually very upsetting violence of Swindler defending herself from these gang members or whatever. Like,
and I think I think this is one case where the use of extreme violence actually helps the scene and helps the context, because it does heighten the stakes, and generally I'm against the use of like very explicit blood and gore unless it does add something to a scene, and I think here it does add a considerable amount.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it does a good job of like, I mean, the thing that I think we keep praising about this show is it finds like interesting new, like no matter how the status quo changes, it finds interesting new scenarios to throw our characters into, right? Like in that first episode of these two, like Swindler and Sister are on their own, right? Like they don't have any of the other like Akudama to back them up. Now we know that Doctor is a traitor, and she has decided to like, bring Hoodlum along for the ride, right? Like, and then you had like Cutthroat and Courier kind of being their own independent like agents in this episode, and it's like, like I said early on, I think the thing I was always worried about is that as they started killing off more characters, or they exited the show, that we would get less interesting scenarios, right? Because there's just less pieces to play with. But they continue to find really fun, compelling things to do with these characters, no matter like what configuration they're in, basically.
Right. I mean, that's kind of what is just the natural progression of separating the group till you're down to the core. And like I said last time, I don't want to see a show with just Swindler and the kids, but they're kind of pulling it off, at least for an episode or two, right?
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and I think I feel like it's going to be interesting because I feel like this is sort of like the lowest point here, right? Like everybody's dead. You've got Swindler, the sister, and like Courier, basically. Everyone's either dead or betrayed them, right?
Yes.
And how are they gonna resolve this? And one thing I will say, part of me does kind of wish they kept the group together as like the lovable murder heist movie thing that we were getting in the first couple of episodes.
I mean, I think there's a version of the show that does that and is still an awful lot of crazy fun,
I feel like I there's no way to know for sure, but I feel like I probably would have preferred that to the path that we've gone down.
You know what?
Even up to now, I've talked about how I've thought everybody's going to assemble again, and maybe that will still happen somehow. But I feel like that would have been more. I guess, fun or entertaining or satisfying to me than the path that they've gone. But the path that they've chosen, once they've made that choice, I feel like they've done a good job keeping it.
It's much more ambitious as well. I think that there's, they have gone for broke, and I think it's working so far.
Well, I mean, we will see how it goes in the end, but I definitely see where you're coming from, Jel, because I kind of agree with you that, like, I'm definitely enjoying the current episodes, but, like, there was a very specific dynamic going on at the beginning that is definitely no longer here, and, like, maybe, that's the sign of a good writer that, like, we missed that dynamic, and they succeeded.
Like, having these characters interacting with each other was, like, the most fun I had with the show.
Right, like, and I think for better or worse, like, there are aspects of the show that are more interesting, but I think they're also less likable, right? Like, Hoodlum and Doctor, like, forming a team is not really that interesting to me. Like Doctor's motivations are very, like, kind of classic anime villain,
right?
Whatever. It's like, and they're kind of. I mean, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I do kind of appreciate, like, the unintentional mirror between Hoodlum and Swindler. Like, they were both characters way out of their depth, dragged into this, and, like, seeing, like, Swindler rise to the occasion and, like, truly become the Akudama. In contrast to, like, Hoodlum, who has become increasingly more passive ever since losing, the safety net that was Brawler, I think is an interesting contrast. Like, but, it's just like, yeah, I don't think that, like for better or worse, right? Like, now that duo of Doctor and Hoodlum was, like, the least interesting part of this show to me now. Like, I'm not writing them off, but it's more like, now that Doctor has, like, laid out, her, like, grand vision for society, it's like... okay, I guess. Like, like, all right, you want to control death. I get it. Like, classic villainous motivation. But, like, it doesn't really, like... It's not really doing much for me. And, like... I'm still waiting for, like, the pupil and her new subordinate, like, dynamic to play out, right? Like, I feel like the Executioner duo of, like, Master and Pupil was, like, so fucking good. And, like... And that's what makes Master's death hit all the harder, but, like, I'm still kind of waiting on the payoff of her becoming the new Master to her new pupil, right? Like, they haven't really done anything with that yet either, so, like...
Yeah. It's... Like, as good as the show's been, I feel like it has been kind of downhill since the train heist, right? Like,
yeah,
I feel like that was kind of, like, the peak of the show.
So can I offer a riposte, then?
But...
because I actually think that the show has gotten better as it's gone on, and I'll give you the reason why, which is I think that the initial show was very stylish, very exciting, very great, a lot of fun, but I think that has successfully made us like and empathise with these characters, and that means that now these dramatic stakes are much more personal to us because we do actually care about what happens with the characters, And I think the show has certainly sacrificed a certain amount of, its roughhouse charm to achieve that. But I also think that, even from the beginning, the show was planting some very big ideas about the Kansai Kanto thing and the weird sort of pseudo-religious stuff. And I think that to satisfactorily answer those questions, the show does have to get a bit more on point, and become a little bit more serious.
Yeah, I think I didn't care about that stuff. I thought that was like cool background.
To me, that's the most interesting part.
To like form the setting.
Like, I care about the big picture
I don't know, man.
thing.
But see, that's the thing that, like, I don't know. I can't get behind that because, like, so many shows do that, dude. Like, so many shows, like, start off really personable and interesting, and then suddenly, like, halfway through, they're like, well, we can't have fun character stuff anymore. We got to address the big picture
But I
issues.
think we're still doing fun.
I feel like so many shows have fallen apart the moment they're like, it's time to get serious. And I'm definitely not saying that Akudama is doing that, but I think it's just, I think I'm kind of more with Gel here, where it's like, I don't.
It's a question of one we feel is good and one we feel would be more good. It's not like one is good or bad.
I think though
really,
that, like, I think there's an inherent ceiling to the kind of show that Akudama was, and I think that by becoming a more plot-focused show, I think it has the chance to break through that ceiling, and that's just my opinion, obviously.
All right, I guess I just don't, as someone who, you like, look, like, fucking Like, as someone who, like, you know, was very happy to get, like, Kill la Kill to be our #1 anime that one time, like, I just don't think that ceiling necessarily needs, like, I don't think that drama ceiling necessarily needs to exist. Like, I think a show can be fun for fun's sake and still be, like, a very, like, well-made, interesting piece
and
of,
I think so,
media,
you know, but
like,
I think like to be truly great, a show needs to have something to say, and I think
I don't think it's saying anything though. Like I get, we kind of care about, like, I guess we kind of care about Swindler and maybe some of the other characters, but like I'm not like. I don't feel like it's going enough in that direction to where there's making a statement or really getting us emotionally attached to the characters to where I want that to be like the main focus.
Right. I mean, the thing I would say is, like, Swindler is the only character, like, if we're being, like, super honest here, like, Swindler is the only character that we have any emotional investment in at this point, right? Like, the rest of the Akudama,
right. I mean, she's like the point of view character,
are paper
right?
cutouts, right? Like, you know, everybody's talking about, like, like, you know, Brawler this or Doctor that, but, like, everybody's forgotten that, like, Courier is actually maybe the flattest character in this show. Like,
I mean, that's kind
like,
of the joke, right? But
what I mean is, like, I totally get what you're saying, Zig, of, like, them taking these big plays, like, means that potentially we get more invested in these characters. But I think realistically, when we say characters, we kind of mean just Swindler, right? Like, even the kids, let's be honest.
I mean, the kids are a MacGuffin.
Kids are a MacGuffin.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Like, look, the sister was very charming in the latest episode, right? Where, like, she's, like, picking up bad words from the rest of the Akudama, you know, like, you know, I don't know, I will always get a kick out of a little girl just saying fucking shit. But, like, you know, as actual characters, right, it's like,
but I think
it's all about Swindler.
But I don't think that's a weakness, you know. I think the rest of the ensemble are specifically designed to support Swindler, and that's fine, you know. I mean, you look at the latest episode, right? Like, it's not necessarily a character tour de force for Cutthroat, but it gives us such, like, a strong impression of him as, you know, a force in that world. And I think that's character work, just not the traditional kind, you know. I mean, they forefront his character, and, you know, they make it clear that all along, even though he's been playing as this kind of, like, charmingly naive, you know, Rain Man-esque thing, in reality he's actually an incredibly dangerous psychopath, you know. And I think...
Right.
See, I would also say, though, even back when we were having fun, before the drama, like, I felt like I was learning more and becoming more endeared to the characters during that time period than what we're at now.
Yeah, but I mean, we're into
like,
payoff now, right? Like, the show needs to raise the stakes to approach a finale, you know. I think that the show has done a good job of building...
I mean, you could have done that by keeping the group together and having them, you know, blow up content or something like
you
that.
know, I saw the train heist. You know, the train heist was fantastic. It was great, and I'm much more interested now in where you go forward from there rather than just seeing that again, if that makes sense.
But I'm saying you didn't have to do the same thing over and over again. I'm just saying going to a more... breaking up the group and, like, isolating Swindler and making it all about her, you know, whatever, and getting into the big plot. I don't... And again, like, we're splitting hairs here.
Right, let's be
the
clear
show's
here.
great.
We still really
we
like
love the
this
show. I'm just
know?
saying, if I were to pick which way I would have wanted to go, I would have preferred a top-notch, you know, heist thing with you know, lovable, you know, group of murderers over a, you know, pretty good, you know, more dramatic thing.
You know what I'm really hearing here, Jel, is you wish they would just announce season 2 of Dorohedoro already.
Yes. We're gonna get to that discussion when we get to our year end.
There's gonna be
about this show versus Dorohedoro.
Right, there's gonna be a knockdown, drag-out fight. This comes.
Let that be a preview of our year-end discussion, because I will have some things to say about comparing those two shows. But yes, I think you are correct, G. That's probably what I really want.
What you really want
is
season 2
of Dorohedoro already.
But
again, Akudama Drive, it's great. I'm loving it.
Yeah. And I
just want it to be clear. Yeah. But, you know, it is you know, we can't shut off the critical parts of our brain.
Yeah, and
here.
I mean, I think a lot of it will depend on whether they stick that landing. You know, I mean, if you go dramatic, you have to have a good payoff to that decision. And
right, it's a higher difficulty maneuver,
yes, exactly,
which means potentially a higher rating, but also there is greater chance of
and you know, we've still got a few episodes to go. You know, I've been encouraged by where they're going with it, but I think there's still a fair bit of ground they have to cover, so we'll see.
Yeah. And again,
do we have any wild predictions before the? Because this is our last chance.
Yeah.
This is our last chance before the show ends. So,
I mean, so the preview of the next episode kind of, I think, seems to imply a sort of Mexican standoff between the Swindler group, the Doctor group, and the Executioners, and I am wondering, you know, because of the nature of how Mexican standoffs work, right? I am curious which of the two of those three will end up teaming up against the other. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like, who makes for the strangest bedfellows, right? Like, in a situation in a three-way standoff between those three.
All right,
groups.
here's my pie in the sky prediction. Only Hoodlum will survive.
I think he's next.
I feel like they are setting up for Hoodlum to go. Well, I actually really liked. I mean, again, like I think that like Hoodlum's scene at the end of the episode with Brawler and Executioner is like masterful, but also like for better or worse. And maybe this is also getting into like why I can't necessarily agree with you, Zig. Is like I think that like Hoodlum is a great example of a character they have not utilized very well ever since those episodes, because like. I was actually legitimately curious, like, what is this character going to do now that, like, Brawler is dead?
I think we're still in the process of finding...
Not that much.
We're still in the process of finding that out, though. Like,
I hope you're right. I really hope you're right that he comes into his own, but I also feel like they're also setting up, like, he's kind of redundant now. Like, if we could kill another character off right now, it could be him.
I mean, like, I don't think he's redundant because he's always been kind of like... He represents the other side of the everyman coin. You know, if Swindler is... the naive one who's in over her head, you know, he's also in over his head, but trying to turn it to his advantage, you know, and that's why I think pairing him with Doctor works, because he automatically gravitates to whoever, you know, is the strongest and, you know, will not kill him instantly.
I mean, he's a hoodlum.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
his job, is to gravitate to the...
Yes.
But, what are the odds everybody comes back?
Hacker, I think Hacker's coming back.
I mean,
Hacker is definitely coming back.
They've absolutely set Hacker off. Like, the only reason to send him away is to have him come back. So
right.
But I mean, Doctor's talking about playing with death and all that. What is the chance everybody comes back?
I actually think it's less likely that Brawler comes back now than I thought it was.
I think
5 or 6 episodes ago, you know, or whenever.
I strongly maintain that like you don't write a send off for a character as good as Brawler's unless you are like planning to permanently cap that character off, right? Like, because if you bring a character like Brawler back, then you need to write an even better send off for him later down the road. Like Dude got the best. Like, you know, I mean, I really like the Cutthroat episode, but like, you know, and to be fair, like Swindler, like fucking going on to getting that Cutthroat with those beam GT was really fucking good. Like, I really enjoyed that scene, but like, you know, let's be real. Cutthroat did not get nearly as good of a send off. So,
I mean, I think there's still an outside chance he's alive. Like.
Cutthroat.
I'm not saying that he's alive. I'm saying what are the chances that they come back?
Bring him back as like a zombie, basically.
I mean,
you
could do anything, right?
Yeah,
anything is possible in the show. So I still think there's a percentage chance that happens.
Which is Brawler and Cutthroat show up with like cybernetic limbs and like their brain replaced by a computer.
Mecha Brawler.
Yeah, Mecha Brawler.
I would not. I mean, would that? I don't think any of us would be shocked if that happened.
I mean, no.
It might not be the most likely scenario.
But I don't know. It's hard to predict where I think that show will go exactly because, I mean, this is the thing we've had fun with it this whole time, right? Is like,
I mean, what is even the end game at this point? Like,
rescue their brother, I guess.
I mean,
get brother back, and then what happens after that?
I think the end game is you destroy the system, right? Like you.
Theoretically, yeah.
You bring chaos to the perfect order of Kanto.
Does Swindler just become the top Akudama?
Right. I think if we could speculate on, anything, it will probably be that yes, somehow by the end of this like, because they've already been hinting at it this whole time that Swindler is coming into her own as a legitimate Akudama.
If by the end of this show Swindler does not get an Akudama style intro like in the first episode for everyone else, I will riot. Like,
yeah, right. Like I was about to say something like that. Like, yes, like like by the end of this show, Swindler has become the greatest Akudama, the king of the Akudama.
Right.
The number one Akudama.
Super S rank.
Oh, one more thing. Why? One more thing I was trying to figure out. Why did Courier just decide to help her? Like,
I'm still like, I mean,
do you think there'll be a reason for that, or it was just
I think he had a change of
his
heart.
mind?
I guess yes. Like the implication is just like, well, like Courier is that character archetype in a nutshell, right? Down to the very roots of like he's gruff, he's to the point, but deep down he's got a soft spot for kids, right? Like that's kind of them not spending the 500 yen coin there has me wondering like, is there something even bigger they're going to use that on? Because like I thought like if there was ever a moment to do the 500 yen coin moment, it was going to be
that
there.
Was the time.
So the fact that she didn't, I'm like, the actual payoff on the 500 yen coin better be like even crazier.
I just thought it was because like I get he could have a change of heart, but I feel like that was just like not. I don't know.
Kind of came out of nowhere.
Kind of came out of nowhere. Yeah, I mean that could also just be the nature of like, look, we don't have that many episodes. Like we can't have like a 5-minute scene of like Courier's internal monologue of like, you know.
All right. Well, by the next time we talk about that show, we will know what happened and we'll be able to pass final judgment. But it's still great, easily the best thing this season.
Definitely.
So, all right. That'll do it for this episode then. We're a little long, but not too much, not too bad. Let's do our housekeeping. You can check us out at theglorioblog.com. Follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music. This list is getting long. Podbean, Stitcher, and also like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. You can check us out there as well. I believe next time we'll be doing our season preview show. It's that time already. So, everybody look forward to that.
Look forward to our hot take predictions about which shows we're going to look forward to and which shows we won't even bring up in the podcast that will suddenly turn out to be our favorite of the season.
So
I still have not forgotten
talking about
that we never even brought up Akudama in our season preview podcast last time.
Right. When I skip talking about the best show of the season, and then it ends up being the best show of the season, you can.
I love surprises.
You can bank that one, but all right. Well, that's it then. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we'll see everybody next time.
働いかにしてられない街に来る